when you're repairing old cameras, sooner or later you're going to come across a fastener like this. This one right here. And basically that's a screw, but in the centre of the screw there's a post. So the only thing you have left to connect your tool to is a slot either side. So that's you're going to need a special screwdriver for that. But there's an answer. But I'll show you another example. This is a shutter out of a Retina 2A, I believe. And that sort of fastener is common on the end of the retard gear train in a shutter of that type. In fact, a very similar fastener was used on the Compur Rapid shutters prior to that. I'll show you another shutter. This is a completely different shutter. This is a shutter out of a Retina Reflex S, I think. Now, this fastener here that holds that spring in position, it actually holds the B lever in position. The spring runs around the fastener as well. That's of the same type. Basically you have a little tiny slot either side and the post rises in the middle. The reason it has a post in this case is that the post is used to hold a spring on the internal cocking ring of these shutters. So let's talk about the screwdriver you need for that. Alright, this is the style of thing you're going to need. Basically it's a standard screwdriver, but the tip has been cut away in the centre to leave 2 points that contact with those notches on the fastener. Now I make these in various sizes depending on the fastener I need to deal with, but basically the procedure is always the same. Here we have 4 screwdrivers of varying sizes. 2 of them will probably do the same job. In this case I've probably made another one after I just misplaced the first one, but they've all been made in the same fashion. And the best tool for dealing with things like that is a Dremel. I found a Dremel to be a great tool for things like that. And what I do is I just cut a slot in the middle as wide as needs to be to clear the post or whatever other obstruction there is on that fastener, and deep enough so it clears the top of the post in each case, so that the tangs either side will engage with the little notches in the screw. And I'll show you how I set the Dremel up to do that. This is the basic setup. As you can see, I've got a cutting disc on here. Basically I fire up the Dremel and then very gently bring the screwdriver in from the side here to cut the slot away. Now these discs, they're cutting discs they're called. They're unreinforced. They're likely to fly to bits if you dig into them, or if they've got some fault, or if you twitch or do something silly. So make sure you're wearing eye protection and you should be good to go. So what sort of screwdriver do we want? Well, what I normally do, as you can see from the sorts of screwdrivers I've got here that I've made special screwdrivers out of, they're the cheap ones. The cheap nasty ones you get in the $5 sets down at the hardware shop that they call precision screwdrivers. They're usually pretty crappy sort of screwdrivers, but that's all you need to do a job like this, because by the first thing you're going to do is change the shape of the tip to suit what you need. Let's bring this back inside here. I'll find a screwdriver, have a quick demo of how this thing works. Let's try this. Well, here you can see I've cut the cut a notch in the middle of that screwdriver tip, and I could continue the depth of that until it did the job. In this case I'm not particularly needing another screwdriver like this, but this one will just join the box all the same. So that's all you need to do in order to get your notch cut into the screwdriver. It's fairly simple. As I say, very cautious with it, very gently feed your screwdriver tip into that disc, very, very gently, keeping control of it all the time. Make sure you've got your eye protection on, you'll be as good as gold. That's usually not the only change you need to make to these cheap screwdrivers. Typically, the thickness of the blade at the end is often too broad, and you need to narrow it down a bit. I'll show you how I deal with that. As you can see, I've changed this for an abrasive band. These cutting discs, they're very fragile. You put this carefully away in your toolbox, chances are by the time you've seen it next time you've managed to bump it with something and shatter the disc. So they do tend to be a bit of a one-use blade. Anyway, to this thing. Basically what I'm wanting to do is thin out the screwdriver at the tip, and I'm going to do that by laying it gently on the top of this. Now that blade is nice and narrow, it's nice and sharp. That would deal with a screw or a post, threaded post that had very small notches, and they quite commonly do have very small notches. So that's all that's required to make a screwdriver like that. Now you'll find those sorts of fasteners in odd places in all manner of cameras. Sooner or later you're going to want to remove one of them, and that's the sort of tool you need to do it. I probably should have mentioned that you can do exactly the same thing with interchangeable tips like these ones here. They would certainly make great candidates for doing a similar job with. Noticeably these ones are quite thick at the tip, so they're going to need some thinning down. Oh, that's a larger one and that's a smaller one. But yeah, you could use the same idea for doing that. And basically it comes down to the same thing, using your Dremel and very gently feeding your screwdriver tip into the edge of that blade. Well, as you can see, I finished that screwdriver tip, and this works well. It fits both of these fasteners. And I mean, for fasteners as small as this, you could probably get away without even putting a handle on this. But certainly that fits those fasteners very well. And that's just a cheap screwdriver tip. Now you wouldn't need to do that. There are other things you can do. Here's one. This was just a very, very short, small screwdriver. About an eighth across the blade would have been, something like that. And here all I've done is exactly the same sort of thing. I've thinned it out because the blades are often too thick, and I've cut away the centre, again using a Dremel. You could go crazy trying to use a file on something like that. Screwdriver tips can be a bit hard. You may get a good result with a file, but you probably won't. The Dremels, they work great.